Hi, this is Anu and welcome back. I am so glad you decided to join me today for this first official real knitting pattern. And today I chose to create this beautiful, super simple scarf, which is made out of a stitch that is called the 2x2 ribbed stitch. You ready to learn it? I cannot wait to teach it to you. The stitch for this whole pattern is very simple. Of course, I will take you through it slowly but surely. For this beginner-friendly tutorial, I used a thicker, bulky yarn and big knitting needles, so it is easier to maneuver the knitting needles and also it goes faster. The knitting needles I chose are bamboo knitting needles. Those are my favorites, especially for beginners, because the yarn slides easily on it. It sticks a little bit and it slides at the same time. It's the really perfect balance between being slippery but not too slippery, and that's why I love bamboo knitting needles. Here is the beautiful scarf. I chose a really nice aubergine color, but of course you can choose any yarn and any color you wish for this beginning project. It is perfect to practice because there is no secret with crochet or with knitting. Practice makes perfect. It's just the way it is. So the repetition between those two knit stitches, two purl stitches, two knit stitches, two purl stitches, at the end of the scarf you will be really good at knitting those two stitches. And then, since they are the base of all the knitting stitches library, we are going to be good to go to begin to create other patterns together. So here is the beautiful scarf that I created in this beautiful aubergine color. But I also wanted to show you that just by changing the yarn, this is I think one of the Karen cakes. I don't remember exactly what yarn I used, but I will put of course all the information about all the yarn and the materials in the info box down below. I just wanted to show you it's the same pattern. It's a thinner yarn, so smaller knitting needles, and maybe casting on a few more stitches at the beginning. But look, it's beautiful and it's the same pattern, and just a change of yarn gives it such a different effect. So make sure you play with this pattern and use different kind of sizes yarn and knitting needle and explore the possibilities. Thank you so much for everyone that subscribed to my channel. If you're not subscribed, please don't hesitate to do so. Click on the subscribe button, it's totally free, and hit on the little bell to be subscribed every time I post something new. Also, don't hesitate to come and check me out on my social media. You can still find my crochet patterns tutorial at the same website. Here is the address for them. From now on, I will try to put a few skeins of the yarn that I am using for my patterns on this channel in my store. My store address is right there, but you know, there is very little quantity, so once it's sold out, it's sold out. All right, so if you are interested in knowing how to create this beautiful knitting scarf, then keep on watching, and in the meantime, happy knitting, and I'll see you next time. Bye. All right, so for this tutorial you will need a set of 2 needles, knitting needles, 8mm. I chose bamboo ones. I also chose a bulky number 5 yarn from the brand Loops and Threads. This specific yarn is called Charisma Grand, and I will put the color in the info box down below. So the pattern that we're going to use, the stitch we're going to use for this beautiful scarf is called the 2x2 ribbed stitch. And I love this for scarf because it's so stretchy, one. And the second reason is that it's the same on the right side than on the wrong side of your work. And that makes it perfect for a scarf. All right, so first we're going to decide how much yarn to leave for casting on. And I wanted my scarf to be about 7.5 inches width. So I left about 30 inches of a long tail for me to have enough to cast on. So what I want to do is think about the width I want my scarf to be, and then measure it, multiplied by 4, and that will be the end yarn that I will leave. And then I will begin to cast on the way I showed you in my casting on tutorial. If you do not know how to cast on, I will put right here in the right corner the link to my tutorial. And you will cast on the number of stitches you need for your width. For me it was 27 stitches, so you need a multiple of 2 and then add 1. So 27 stitches in total. Casting on. loosely if you can, and not too tight, or else it's going to make it really hard for your first row. So try to do it loose enough so those stitches can slide easily on your bamboo knitting needle. And today I will show you how to create the 2x2 ribbed stitch, which is one of my favorite stitches to create scarves. And it is super easy, and it is basically using techniques that I have taught you so far, which is the knit stitch and the purl stitch. But we are going to incorporate both of those stitches in the same row, alternating between knitting and purling. Alright, so you have your main needle on your left in your left hand, and you have your working needle in your right hand. With your working yarn in the back of your work, and you're going to knit 3. Every other row will be began with 3 knits. 3 knit stitches. And that is my personal choice. You could begin your work by knitting 2. It's just that for me, I think that it prevents it from curling on the side. Now you're going to take your working yarn and bring it to the front of your work, and you're going to purl 2. So not this way, but from the right to the left. Not from the left to the right, but from the right to the left, and you're going to purl 2. Again, if you need refresher on knitting and purling, I will put the link to my tutorials in the info box down below. So we knitted 3 and we purled 2. Now for the rest of this row, your pattern will be knit 2, purl 2. Bring back the yarn to the back of your work to knit 2. Once you are done knitting those 2 stitches, you're going to bring back your yarn to the front and you're going to purl 2. We are at the first row of your work, of your scarf. Now, can you see the difference between the knit stitches and the purl stitches? The knit stitches are those V stitches, and the purl stitches are little bumps coming your way. And that is what you're going to do, continuing all along this first row. Knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, and I will meet you at the end of your first row. I like this project because you will be practicing on your knitting and your purling, and at the same time you can already make a scarf. The repetition will make you get better and better, and at the same time you will get a scarf out of it. Alright, so those 2 last stitches of your first row will be 2 knit stitches. And just like that, you're done with your first row. This is what your work will look like. You cannot really see the ribbing yet. That will take a few rows, but I promise it will look really, really cool. So grab your working needle that is turning to become your main needle. And now you can see that the 2 first stitches are 2 purl stitches. And the way you can see it is by looking at the bumps. Those are 2 purl stitches, and you're going to knit them as they present themselves to you. So 2 purl stitches, and then 2 knit stitches. So the way you see them you'll recognize 2 purl stitches with the little bumps. And then you'll see those little V stitches, and that will mean that you have 2 knit stitches right there. And then 2 purl stitches with the little bumps. So you really respect the way the stitches present themselves to you. And they are not hard to recognize. The knit stitches are those little V's, the purl stitches are those little bumps. So knit as they present themselves to you until the end of your second row. Remember, at the end of your second row, you're going to have 3 purl stitches, since we began the first row with 3 knit stitches. And this is what your work will look like at the end of your 5th row. And you can definitely see the ribbed pattern being created. It's so beautiful. And for your scarf, what you're going to do is rows and rows and rows of that, repeating those first and second rows over and over and over again until you have your desired length. And look at mine, I made it really long. The fact that the yarn is bulky and you use 8mm knitting needle helps to make this scarf not too tedious. I love using big knitting needles and big yarn for beginners projects. It makes it easier and faster. So when you reach the desired length of your scarf, it will be time to cast off. The same way we cast it on, now we need to cast off to finish your work. And I will show you how to do that. It's super easy. You're going to respect your stitches as they present themselves to you. In our case, the first one right here is a knit stitch. You can see the V stitch right there. So I'm going to knit the first stitch, and then I'm going to knit the second one as well. Now you have 2 stitches on your working needle, and you're going to take the first stitch, put it over the second. Here you go, 1 stitch is casted off. And you're going to repeat by knitting the next stitch and passing the back loop over the front loop. The next stitch is a purl stitch. Bring your yarn forward, purl, pass the back loop through the front loop. And once again, purl stitch, back loop to the front loop. And you knit or purl respecting the stitch as they present themselves to you. And you're going to do that all along until you reach the last stitch. There you go, you cast it off until you have 1 loop left on your knitting needle. And you're going to cut your yarn and pull, and you are done. You casted off your work. The only thing left to do is to take your tapestry needle and sew in the loose tails, and you are done. And just like that, we created our first knitted pattern together, this beautiful, super easy to make knitted scarf. I hope you have enjoyed this pattern as much as I have enjoyed creating it for you. I am looking forward to many, many more. And in the meantime, happy knitting, and I will see you next time. Bye! In knowing how to crochet, no. The yarn that I use for this, what else did I want to tell you? Yeah, I think that's it, right? So many different and explore. All right, so if you are interested.